and welcome to the Property Show. I am Neha Nagpal. The Modi government on June 2 has cleared the Model Tenancy Act 2021 and put down the ground rules of tenancy in black and white. The act aims to create the effective regulatory ecosystem in the Indian rental real estate market and to protect the interest of both the tenants as well as the landlords. But what change it will bring to the Indian real estate market? Will it strengthen the rental market in the country? How will it impact the real estate sales? Let's get all these answers from the experts on the panel today. Today on the panel, I have with me Mr. Ashok Mohanani, Vice President NAREDCO and Chairman Ekta World, Virender Joshi, Vice President Research ANAROCK, and Boman Irani, President-elect CREDAI National and Managing Director and Chairman Rustamji.
To start with, sir, the government has approved the Model Tenancy Act. It looks really fascinating at this point of time. What is your analysis on this?
This Model Tenancy Act will definitely give an impetus to all the buyers as well as the tenants, the landlords. It gives, as you said, it will be a comfort situation. It will be more of a win-win situation for the landlords as well as for the tenants, and people will come out to give their premises because we have a huge, Virender will give us the data, but according to me, we have about 11 million houses pan-India which are vacant. And for what reason? Because of insecurity, because of trust deficit, and because of the norms and because of the regulations. So once a regulatory is in place, and we've seen that even in RERA, we've seen that in TRI, we've seen that in so many once SEBI, that once regulatory comes in place, things get moving fast and it becomes a more positive ambience for the buyer, for the tenant, as well as for the investor.
What's your take, Mr. Joshi?
This is a first step towards creating a vibrant, sustainable rental housing market. And it is a much needed thing. As Ashok ji said, we have around, as per census 2011, it's around 11 million units which are vacant. And for what reasons? Because there is a lack of trust, and on the other side, we are talking about urban housing shortage. So this is the only way we can bridge the urban housing shortage, wherein, a lot of rental housing stock comes in the market. People are willing to, put their houses on rent without any fear that the tenants will just occupy my premises, will never go out of it and such things. So, and of course, there is a redressal mechanism also. Civil codes are no longer needed. There will be a rent code. There are all mechanisms in place which will make it a structured market. And that is the need of the day, So not only it will provide housing opportunities, but also investments will flow in.
Do you see any loopholes in this law currently?
If a particular state has some vested interest and wants to dilute the act to a certain extent, that is not conducive. Why? Because the center has come out with all these rules and regulations, keeping in mind all stakeholders. And any state diluting will not offer a level playing field to other states, So the aim is to have a level playing field. Whatever is in Bangalore should be in Mumbai, so be in Gurgaon.
How do you see that is that there is a loophole? Because of course, this is a Model Tenancy Act and it has been approved by a political party. And then, there are different states divided into it. How do you see that?
Various states should not bring in politics as far as it comes to protection of the tenant or the landlord is concerned. Yes, what Virender says is very true that it's not mandatory. Okay, had it been mandatory, like RERA was mandatory, okay, had it been mandatory, it would have been a level playing field. So I think it'll evolve. As it's a little too early, but I think the states will evolve because it is good for the growth. Okay, it's good for the growth of economy, because not only the Prime Minister's vision will get fulfilled of housing for all, but everyone actually will be having a roof over them.
Individual states, by virtue of the fact that they have to know more on-ground related issues, will have to take into consideration what is applicable to them. And yes, it could be diverse. It could be very different for various states. And there is no harm in that either.
Looking at today's scenario, investors are, way too less in numbers. If you talk about this, is an end user market. Do you think that this move will going to certainly attract investors, Mr. Mohanani?
I know so many friends who are NRIs, okay, and they keep asking me that give me some property where I can, put on yield. Okay, they are waiting, in fact. And after this act, I'm telling you, there'll be a surge in demand for properties which are having a tenant, because this gives them a sense of security. The investor Whether he gets 6% commercial or he gets 2.5% residential, that's a separate, his own take. Though commercial is also covered under the Model Tenancy Act, but it'll be his take whether he wants to invest in commercial or in residential. But yes, there will be a good demand for both residential and commercial as far as the Tenancy Act is concerned. Yeah.
Maybe in the immediate term, we might not see an impact because there are a lot of things going on in the market. COVID wave has impacted the overall market. So from a medium to long term perspective, yes, definitely it's a good move. But in the short term, investors will wait and watch as to how different states adopt the Model Tenancy Act. But now, if you just step like 3-4 years backwards, RERA was one thing that was put in place. So residential market overall is organized. Model Tenancy Act, we have to view it as a subset of RERA, not technically, but finally rental housing is a subset of the overall market. So with the overall market now being organized, transparent, and now rental housing also being sorted, definitely investors will make a comeback.
1.1 crores is available. So so that property, those stock was made for the sale purpose, or it was actually are these houses constructed only for the renting purpose? No, it was meant for the sale purpose, right? So how does that going to really push the sales in Indian real estate market? Just put some light on that.
Different types of categories of buyers. Okay, they would have been investors, they have been actual users, and like if you go to see Noida, for example, okay, live example, okay, right. There's millions of square feet lying there unoccupied, not for anybody's fault, but for the infrastructure not happening there. There is no electricity, there is no power, there is no water connection, and people want to shift in, and they need connectivity also, no? Okay, they need to approach their house from the workplace. So now that has to be looked into. It's not that they were not interested in using their house. They are definitely interested in occupying the house, but given the opportunity, they would do that. NRIs also, and they have invested in India. They have got trust in India. They feel that अपने वतन में कुछ अपनी जगह होनी चाहिए. Wherever you say someday they want to fall back in India. Okay, they have invested. They may not require the entire portfolio that they've invested. They may be having 3 or 4 investments. One house they are staying. The rest they want to give on yield on rent, but they were not encouraged to do it unless it was a body corporate and they had a 1 crore paid up capital. Then they would probably get into the leave and license agreement. They were protected. But now after this, they would venture out to give their unsold inventory also will come up in the market. So both ways, I think it's a win-win situation. Yeah.
So is there any different set of clause or something different which is mentioned in this Tenancy Act?
NRIs also are, at par with any Indian as far as investment is concerned, or rental act is concerned.
How this really, since this particular model is more inclined towards landlord than the tenants, how do you think that it's going to protect the tenants, right?
I don't think it is particularly inclined towards landlords. It's basically managing the relationship between two parties. So there are clauses which sound as if it's not favorable for the landlords. But if you just go through the entire act, what it just says is, it says that the security deposit amount is fixed. I mean, the cap on the number of months is fixed, not amount per se. What kind of defects does the structural defects and all landlords have to manage? Internal work and all the tenants have to manage. So there are definite terms and conditions when they have clearly defined what does the landlord do, what does the tenant do. Also, you have to necessarily get into a written agreement, which is fair for both landlord as well as tenant. It can be either ways. A landlord can cheat a tenant or a tenant can cheat a landlord. So I don't think it's necessarily skewed towards landlord benefits. It's a very good act wherein, everything is now transparent. It's put on paper. It's registered. It's uploaded on the authority's website.
There was no written document. 71% of the cases, Neha, have got no written document at all. It was all informal. Okay, the previous Pagadi system was going on and people were paying the same rent they used to pay, their forefathers used to pay 50 years back. That's what they're paying. How do you expect landlords to maintain this house? Tell me, how do you expect them to look after it? And then obviously it will lead to dilapidated condition of building and therefore then demolition and redevelopment. Of course, that's important that we should get into redevelopment, but not because of default. Okay, not because we are not able to maintain. This will at least give a comfort to the investor, to the landlord, that is my premises is secure. Okay. If the tenant, after the old Tenancy Act, what happened? For years together, he would not pay rent. What happened? You go to the small cause court and then drags on for 20 years, 30 years. And so that is not, I mean, what the intent was of the legislature, even at that time, I'm sure. But now with this modification, like it's going to be a very balanced, atmosphere for both the owner as well as for the tenant, and it'll be. I mean, it's good for the economy at large when houses start getting occupied.
During the pandemic, we have seen that came into the light where tenants were not allowed to occupy the property, but they have paid the security, and they had no choice to either go to the court or plead to the media organization during that time, because they had left the certain premises and were about to shift. All that had really happened. So, do you think this act will really going to help such cases as well?
Anything that comes as an act actually gives them some amount of stability, certainty, and it makes them a little stronger. But more importantly, once an act like this is in place, a lot of people will get used to the idea. It will not be leave license. People will actually invest so that they can lease these flats out or let these flats out on tenancy basis, which will make, let's say, both sides equally balanced. Otherwise, what was happening right now is largely we as investors would feel very uncertain or very unsafe if we rented a flat out, because anything can happen. Now that we are safer, the documents will be a lot more in line. Everybody's rights and obligations will be spelled out a lot better. It's only when you're trying to make do with a not so implementable law that you finally wind up creating documents that aren't clearly enforceable. Now we'll be able to make enforceable documents, and both sides will be standing to benefit now.
The courts will definitely protect the tenants if the landlord, after committing, has not been able to fulfill his obligation. So I don't think it's a very prudent thing for a landlord to do that, because of the pandemic. On the contrary, he should be more empathetic towards the tenants. In Mumbai, I've seen that people have reduced the rent also during that period. So, I mean, this is something which the courts will definitely support the tenants. Yeah.
One of the users is saying, is this act is applicable in Bangalore as well? I hope this will be implemented properly in a city like Bangalore, where the landlords charge 12 months of deposit and they do not pay you back when you really vacate the property.
So every state, has got the liberty. As I said earlier, it's not mandatory. Okay, but we have to urge all the state governments to actually, accept this law. I mean, we did that even in RERA. Okay, so I don't see any reason why it should not replicate. But as of now, the challenge is there. Every state has got the liberty to adopt or otherwise. So they can continue with their own old rental act also, or they can adopt this thing. Yeah. So this challenge will remain. Yeah.
Entire MTA is applicable prospectively. So, if there are consumers who are thinking, okay, now that MTA is in place, I will sort out all my issues with the current agreement. That's not going to be the case. This is applicable prospectively, and every state, as Mr. Ashok ji also said, is free to have their own versions. So, they have framed the act as if it should be same for every state, so that there is a level playing field for everyone. But it might not be the case.
Subletting is another aspect. This gentleman has said that he's actually been, worried about the subletting of the property. Do you think that concern has been addressed in this Tenancy Act?
I don't think subletting is a part of the act, because it's very clear. I mean, that it's all defined what a tenant is and what a landlord is. And I would not be able to get you much of information about subletting, but I think it is not part of this act at all, unless Boman has a different view in this. Yeah.
No, it's not covered. It's not covered. And as a matter of, why should subletting take place unless it is clearly defined in the agreement? So, like I said, there was so much of gray area earlier that by the coming of this act, and once the state adopts it and gives it its own color, we will be able to debate a lot more, Neha, at a later date.
Thank you so much, everyone, for joining in for the property show. Thank you. Thank you so much.
It is evident that the government has taken a positive step by clearing the Model Tenancy Act 2021. However, we will have to see how soon this can be implemented on the ground by all states and UTs across the country. Since real estate and land is a state subject, for states to repeal the old rent laws or amend, it may take even longer. There may be a few states which may not implement this act at all. On that note, I'll take your leave, so stay tuned with MBTV for more updates. Please subscribe to Magic Bricks on YouTube and press the bell icon to get new videos.